Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Devil on a Fence. Today's topic is going to be gun control. More specifically, I will be taking the standpoint of reasons that we should have more gun control, more regulation put into place. Alright, with that said, let's just jump right into it. Guns escalate things. Now, what I mean by that is whenever you add a weapon, a more dangerous weapon into something, it's always going to make things inherently more dangerous. Let's look at things like road rage, right? So my parents are from New York, New Jersey area, and in that area, laying on your horn and yelling at people and flipping them the finger while they're driving by if they do something idiotic is pretty much the norm. If you go to New York City, you're going to see that all the time. But now down here in Texas, you constantly hear stories, not constantly, but you hear stories of people who they honked at someone and then that person followed them and then in their altercation, pulled out a gun, making it a lot more dangerous than just if someone got into a fight or something. With that said, I have a graph taken that shows the statistics, the average of homicide rates, that shows homicides by weapon type between 1980 and 2008. So the first thing that stands out is homicides involving handguns are way above the rest. They account for almost, just roughly looking at it, about half of all homicides. And that's because they escalate things. It's a lot easier to kill someone with a gun than it is to kill them with a blunt weapon or another object, because it's just pretty much aiming and pulling a trigger. Whereas with a blunt weapon, you'd have to attack them over and over and over again, right? So it makes it a lot easier. Another kind of troubling statistic is, here's the graph of, this graph shows homicides involving guns by age of victim. And if you look at it, it shows the percentage of homicides that involve guns. And in that age range of, late teens, early 20s, it has a peak at about almost 80%. And that's because, when people are in that age, they're not fully functional. They don't think as well. They don't think things through very much. And so when you add a tool in for them that allows them to essentially not have to think so hard about what their actions are going to do, not giving them time to cool down, or just, you can shoot and then leave, like right away. And you can kind of see that as you get older, the percentage of homicides that involve guns go down because, people get more level-headed. They won't use guns as much. Maybe they don't have access. Any number of reasons, but you can clearly see the trend that in that area where people are considered more hot-headed, they're definitely more likely, if it's a homicide, to involve a gun. And the last chart that I'm going to show is just the homicide rates by weapon type, and it's just, another one that will show about half of all homicides per 100,000 people are from firearms, from guns and other such weapons. And you can kind of see the epidemic that it is when you consider it to being equal to all the other weapons combined, if not more than that. The second topic that we're going to talk about is how guns have such a high success rate in suicides. If we go back to this, these statistics that I've taken from the reports from the Center for Disease Control, and this is in 2014, you can see intentional self-harm here and also the assault values. And you can see that in suicide, there's about 43,000 deaths in 2014 alone from suicide, which is a crazy high number. That's an epidemic in itself, but then you look down and you see, wow, almost about half of them, really about half of them, I've broken it down more, divided it And you can see in this pie graph that half of them basically are from firearms. And going back to this other one, you look at it and you look at the different age values that you get, and you see the graph moves on. It moves on from 5 to 14, 15 to 24. Those are when the numbers actually start appearing, because before then they don't have values for suicide. And you see that with firearms, it's 174 kids from the age of 5 to 14 commit suicide with firearms out of the 428 total. It's already just such a high number to be using. And then you go a little bit further where it's 15 to 24. There's still a lot of young people in that age group, and it's half. It's about 2,300 suicides in 2014 alone that involve firearms. And the thing is, when you commit a suicide with a firearm, it's a lot more effective. There's a much higher chance that people won't get to you in time. Because with things like pills and hanging and other such things, if you're in that young age group, typically you're living near people. And so when you're living near or around people, it's actually quite common for suicide attempts to be stopped, for people to find you in time. If you're trying to hang yourself or something, people will find you in time to cut you down so you can't suffocate. People will find you in time if they see that you've overdosed on pills. So they can find you, and that makes those suicide rates less successful when you do that. And it kind of goes, we have to look at these suicide rates and we go, wow, these are already too high by themselves with all the other things. Do you really want to have it be half and have those people not have the chance to get help? Do you really want that many suicides per year with guns just so that you can say that hey, I own a gun and I'm proud of it because it's my Second Amendment right? And that kind of segues into the next topic. Segueing in, we're going to look at the Second Amendment. That's, the big pro-gun, right to own, things like that. That's the big pushing point that they had say, it's in the Constitution, it is our right to bear arms. And then put up what the actual Second Amendment reads, and it says, a well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And that talks about things like, what that essentially means is the ability to keep arms for a militia, maintain it well. And I think the main point I want to make with this is the Bill of Rights was ratified in 1791. That's over 200 years ago. And changes not only in technology, but also societal changes are vastly different than they were back then. For instance, a big one we're going to look at first is, back then, you definitely needed a gun in most places to help your livelihood to survive, because it was not uncommon for things like raids to happen, for there to be bandits on roads, outlaws, and you didn't have a standing army back then, nor did you have a police force like you do nowadays. In the past, when this bill was put in place, it was pretty much just the townspeople would protect the town, and that's essentially all it was. If something happened, there was no one who was going to come help you right away. It was just, you had the townspeople, you had your militia that was ready to protect, and they all had their weapons. And society has changed in such a way that we don't need a militia anymore. And even if you were to say that the militia was put in place because it was a militia that essentially took out won the Revolutionary War for us, right? Well, when you look at it, you go, okay, well, even if we were allowed to own the type of guns that we own nowadays, and we said, hey, let's rebel against the state, we don't like what the government's doing, let's have another revolution, let's fight for our freedom or whatever, well, it wouldn't work out too well, because the difference between military technology and what you're legally allowed to own is crazy. I don't think anyone would argue that they can win a fight. Let's kind of look at how weapons have advanced. So you see that in a typical Revolutionary era musket, this is about when the Bill of Rights was ratified, you had an effective fire rate of between 3 to 4 rounds per minute and a max accurate range of 50 meters. Whereas nowadays, it is much, much greater than that. We're talking, it's not even comparable, the amount of bullets that you can fire, your fire rate, nor the accuracy range. It's just, it eclipses it. Because that's to be expected, you know, it's been 200 years. Well, I propose, let's say we say guns are allowed. At what point is the typical technology that we have enough to kind of go, hey, maybe we shouldn't let people have those? If in the future, let's say we go 200 years into the future and weapons from sci-fi are around, you know, and they're just essentially weapons of mass destruction, pretty much. Weapons that are so much more effective at what they do that we can't even comprehend them now. Would you say that we still have the right to own these very extremely dangerous weapons? I think most people would agree that at some point you have to kind of go, that's too much. Like, when they agree that that point is too much, they're going to realize, well, we should change it. We should make new laws about this. We should alter the rights that were given to us hundreds and hundreds of years ago, centuries ago. And they'll go, okay, well, there will obviously be some people who go, no, I don't like that argument, you know. It's in our Constitution. It's in our Bill of Rights. We're not allowed to change that. Our founding fathers knew better. And my counter-argument to that would be, well, you know, the Bill of Rights was a change to the original Constitution anyway. If after just a couple years, less than 20 years after the actual Constitution was made, they decided that, hey, you know, we made some mistakes, let's change it up and add in these new things, don't you think that 200 years later we should look back on those things that we changed, look back on it and go, well, you know, this doesn't make much sense anymore? I think that everyone would agree that you do have to keep updating your rules and regulations as you go. That's just a normal thing to do. You're not always going to be the same. What worked 10 years ago doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work today or 10 years from now, let alone 200 years ago. And that's kind of my final point that I wanted to go with. The Second Amendment is just that. It's an amendment. We have the ability to change these things. Alright guys, thanks for watching my segment on gun control. I want to remind you that the viewpoints that I have in these videos are not always necessarily my own, and I do intend on looking at things from the other side and making videos with the other viewpoints as well. With that said, like, comment, subscribe, and let me know if there's anything you think I should change about my argument, or any counterpoints that you think I didn't do too well on, or that I should have done better. Or if you just want to argue with me in general, that's always fun too.